the record.
The record.
And did you all get that message that's like, we are now recording?
Yes. So I record all the lectures that I do now just because I have students that have show up one day, not the other day, 1 week, not the other week. And
you run a very tight ship.
It's been rough, okay? It's been rough on me, on them. So we try to accommodate everyone. But when you start the call and you start the recording, the person starting the recording doesn't get the warning message. And so I always have that moment of awkwardness of like, okay, did you guys hear the creepy message? Okay, now I can start the lecture.
I didn't know that until you just said that, though, because I was like, why don't I get the voice when I record? But now that makes a lot more sense.
And especially being my first classes, I'm like, am I doing something wrong? They're all giving me that's like, I am not here mentally stare. I'm like, am I recording? Am I not? Am I teaching? Am I not?
Yeah.
We'll find out.
Did you want to do the thing?
What's that?
Our little script guy.
Oh, you have it written down somewhere. I love this. Even better.
We're going to try. This is our 3rd season already of our podcast.
Yeah, you all are actually guests. You're on the first episode
of season 3.
Season 3.
So we're setting the bar low. God.
That's a great start. Do you want to go ahead and introduce it then?
All right. I haven't looked at this in a while. All right. Hello, everyone. Was that really loud? That was really loud. I screamed. Welcome to In Love with Movies. Stop laughing at me. A show where Dani and Nic, I'm Dani.
I'm Nic.
Oh, yeah. We're a young and in love couple.
Hey, we got the names right this time.
Yep. We talk about, you guessed it, movies and
love.
Wow. Today's love topic is, what's our love topic, Nic?
Our love topic is love between friends.
And our movie is something this is honestly, thank you all for choosing this movie, because usually Nic picks a movie. I'm like, I don't want to watch it. But today we're going to be talking about, do you want to say it?
The Princess Diaries.
Which is a fantastic movie. So exciting. And we have a couple of guests. So now let's make some love.
I don't remember that, but I love it. All right. That's where, okay, all right.
And that's where you lose your guests.
And introduce our guests. In fact, I'm going to let them introduce themselves. Susie and Claudia, why don't you please introduce yourselves and give us a little bit of information about you to our listeners.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for listening today. My name is Susana Gomez Ornelas. I'm one part of Bias Check-In, the podcast about international students and IO psychologist practitioners in the day-to-day corporate world. Just graduated from my master's, my incredible program director, Nic here. And I am now.
You don't have to lie to my listeners. They know I'm a pedant. They know that I'm an awful instructor. Continue
flattering me. No, I'm kidding.
Oh my gosh, please, no, stop complimenting.
No, stop.
You embarrass me.
Claudia,
everyone, go. I am Claudia de la Pona. First thing that Susie and I bonded over are our ridiculously long names. But I'm the other half of Bias Check-In podcast. Also graduated from the same program, somehow survived Nic's classes. I am proof that it's doable. Hang in there. And yeah, we're here today to talk about our friendship and how we ended up sharing a podcast, 2 jobs, and occasionally my pets.
Do you all live together?
Nope.
Oh. Sorry, I shouldn't have started off with a question.
That's where I was going next. Was
Do
different
you?
questions. So we can.
Sometimes depends on how good Nic's being, you know. There's a house in the garage for him. Separate house in the garage.
Separate house in the garage. I mean, we do have different spaces within the house that we live in. Listeners obviously know this, and I can't remember if the two of you have ever talked to us about it, but we moved into a bigger space so that we could have separate spaces.
And if you couldn't tell, this is Nic's room.
No, that's fantastic. And I appreciate you all giving your podcast right off the bat, because that's a big part of what I was going to start with and making sure that we hear a lot about, since that is part of why we have you all listening here. If you haven't listened before, Bias Check-In has been a wonderful educational source for me. Both Claudia and Susie, when they were my students, were people who politely but firmly pointed out some of my own biases, and also just helped me to see some of the things that, you know, and it's not that I was always able to find the solutions or anything like that, but they pointed out things that I just didn't even see, and have been a great resource to help open my eyes. And I have spoken to other academics to talk about opening their eyes as international students and their experience. So, all right, and now that we've both flattered each other, was going to go into my next question of, why don't we start with sort of you all's love story? So what's apparently you bonded first on your long names, and then give us the rest of that. Regale us and our listeners with your entire tale of your friendship.
Oh, we just recorded our birthday episode, so this is literally fresh off our minds, like 30 minutes ago.
So fresh.
Awesome. All right. So just bring some of that exact same magic that I didn't know you were putting down on the mic elsewhere and repeat it right now, right here.
It's okay. It's a crossover episode, but basically I poached Susie from her mentor in grad school, from her student mentor from my cohort. As the only other international student there on the same visa, I was like, oh my gosh, you understand what it's like. How can I be a resource? Because as you mentioned, Nick, like, it's not, I mean, I don't want to like poop on Roosevelt, like it was perfectly fine. But there are a lot of situations in which international students are an afterthought, because we are such a small percentage of the student population. And also because once you start mentioning immigration and legal requirements and all that, people tend to be more hesitant about giving you advice, just in case you end up getting deported. No one wants you on their conscience.
Oh no.
You think we're kidding? Like,
Yikes.
And I kind of get it. I kind of get it, but that's basically how we started talking. And then summer 2020, immigration and customs enforcement started pushing new rules for international students. So we reached out to each other, just like, do you know what this means? Like,
yeah,
what are we doing?
Angrily typing out an email to Nick saying, help, please help.
Oh, no.
And I was probably like, I want to, but I don't have a lot of resources. I don't know the answer to any of these questions you're asking me.
No, I think it was, so we were both safe.
Sorry?
We were both safe under the new rules. No, you weren't. I was safe under.
I wasn't, because I was only doing online classes.
I was safe under regulations.
I remember this, yeah.
And I was like, Nick, I know COVID is a thing. I have OCD. I know COVID and COVID safety, but we better have in-person classes. You do not understand how important this is. And then we started talking, like we reached out to each other like, hey, other international student, like, I don't know if I'll be able to enter the country. I don't know if they're going to kick you out. So
what's good. Also, when that happened, it was 2 days after I just signed a new 12-month lease. And if anyone is, I don't know about other cities necessarily, but Chicago based, I wasn't exactly looking forward to leave my boyfriend with a 12-month lease and have to leave. So I think at one point I was considering taking an undergrad English literature class as an elective, just to say, look at me, I'm on campus.
So can you explain a little bit what the rules were, that they were going to kick you out or not let you in?
So basically, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was that international students, usually pre-pandemic, are now supposed to just take online classes because there's a fear that someone will abuse the system, come into the US to do something else, either employment or whatever, and just use the student visa as a way to get through.
I love Susie's face, like, people abusing the system. Yes, like that doesn't happen in every way, at every level, and every person, no matter what your circumstances are. There are people who try to do that. Anyway, continue.
Oh, it was mostly like, you want to work?
Oh yeah.
Get a salary.
How dare you? How dare you try to find a better place in life?
Pretty much. It's like, especially in our field, no, we just want to study work for the rest of our lives, but we don't actually care to make an income. Don't worry about it.
No, but so if you're an international student, you can only take one class online per semester.
Yeah. Also, so that if you go MIA on your paperwork, on the things, like your school representative has your class schedule. So at the very least, we should know that at 10 a.m. on Wednesdays, you are in room 205 in your intro to business class or whatever. And our institution
and this was an issue because there were no classes that were in person, right?
Exactly.
Because it was like, okay, so I don't have access to a vaccine. I don't have access to healthcare in this country. And you want me to take the CTA every day to go to a building where I'm going to be the only person in it because everyone else is at home on their computers.
That's unsafe.
Yeah. And from my perspective, I can remember I was admittedly mostly focused on myself, being very selfish at the time. And I don't know if I'd say OCD, but certainly anxious. Danielle can confirm that my anxiety has been a source of stress in my life and certainly our relationship, and particularly my anxiety around COVID. So I'm like relieved that I'm never going to have to be in a physical location before then all of a sudden I'm informed that like, hey, this is still going to present a problem for these other people. And as you just described, like best case scenario, we're going to put you in a position where you do have to go to a physical location and risk your life. And I'm like, I'm not leaving my house. This is still when I was like straight up lockdown, like didn't want to go outside.
That's fun.
And meanwhile, they're like, hey, yeah, we're going to make you do this, whether you like it or not, or you're going to be booted. And I was very relieved when the university made the decision to have no in-person classes, which was a good thing. But then it was like, oh, it also simultaneously creates. Luckily, if I remember correctly, the end of the story was essentially the government backed down on this and kind of like altered their stuff. And yeah, okay. Which frankly, to this day, I don't know what the hell we would have done. Like the thing we had, I think, figured out we were going to do as a school was we were going to list classes like officially from the registrar's office as being in person, but then it would be like communicated that like, oh, for different reasons, this in-person class is just going to conveniently be constantly meeting in person over Zoom. Like,
yeah.
Which also for our institution in particular, and at least for the business school, hybrid classes were already a thing, and online classes were already a thing. So there wasn't even the argument of like, well, we have to reinvent the wheel and we have somehow to make a square wheel work. And so sorry, you're going to be collateral damage. It was absolutely logistically feasible, but mostly worked out because most of the Ivies ended up suing the government and
the people with the power and the money to be able to back up those kinds of claims. And also conveniently, schools that tend to have a lot of very smart international students that choose to attend there.
You're saying we're not smart.
Yeah,
Jeez, Nick.
Well, we did all, including myself and my wife, graduate from Roosevelt, and we'll just leave that there.
Whoa.
Just think all graduates of Roosevelt. That's all we're saying. That's it. But I want to hear more about you all's relationship, because I know that it started with obviously the bond and sort of the connection of like, hey, we're both going through some shit together. Talk to me about how that grew into a deeper friendship, something that you consider to be, you know, so deep you love each other, and then also grew into a podcast.
The trauma really brought us together.
I was about to say trauma and dark humor as a coping mechanism. That was pretty much the foundation of this entire relationship.
No, but to say that, so we talked with each other about this whole process. Once we decided we were fine, we had a speaking engagement with the coffee house that brought us even closer together. And after that, we had a lot of positive feedback from that conversation. And that grew into, people don't really know about this whole process. You know what we should do? We should have a podcast.
Yep. So at that speaking engagement, we got a lot of questions because, of course, your personal experience is always going to be absolutely basic and transparent to yourself. I'm like, of course I know I need to file my taxes this way. And then these are the limitations on my practicum hours. That was a whole thing I bothered Nick about a little bit.
Both of us.
You're not the only one, and you educated me so that I can help future students. So that's the important piece.
Again, thank you for putting the positive spin on it. I think at some point I emailed you at 3 a.m. So I'll leave that where it is.
Not like I was reading it at 3 a.m. Like you can email it to me whenever you want.
But just to say, I was like, oh my gosh. Anyhow, I felt like I was a bother. But like that's also I think like each of us knows our personal circumstances, but if we don't voice that, other people are not mind readers. Other people have their entire
Talk about me.
Wow, okay. I was kind of there. This is a sample of our work sample in place. I'll let you talk about yourself because you know that experience best, and I don't want to make assumptions.
How did we become friends? Is the question at hand.
I
was long-windedly getting there.
It's okay, Claudia. I feel you. We in my household we call that a Baldwin story. There's all the context, and you got to go down all the little tangents.
Susie is Dani, Claudia is Nick in this relationship.
Yep. Okay, now that you completely cut me off,
we completely derailed her.
Like now, I'm just like I'm sure. You take it from there.
I came back from Mexico City in September, and we had never actually like spoken in person ever. Like
So that confirms something I was going to ask. So you two were students, but you maybe never had class together.
We never had class together.
And so this entire friendship truly did blossom like online through pandemic concerns and revolving around international students. Okay, awesome.
Yeah. Cool. So orientation, you introduced Ryopa, and I was like, she's on Ryopa, cool. Never saw her again.
That's the meet cute right there. Okay, there's a human being, never gonna see them for 2 years. All right.
Literally. And then the Christmas party, when we took the picture.
Oh, of course you were gonna mention the picture. Okay.
Is there a story behind this picture? Did I not know something?
Wait, was this the one that I was at too? At that bar with the thing?
Yes.
We're talking about in person. So. Okay.
You complimented my outfit, Dani, that night. I remember that very clearly.
Obviously.
But at one point, at the end of the night, when I was the only Ryopa member left there, the first year cohort decided to take a group picture because, oh my gosh, look at us. We made it through our first semester. Aren't we cute and adorable?
Yes, we are.
And someone decides that as the only representatives of Ryopa, I needed to be shoved into that. And there's a very clear picture where like half of the cohort is looking at me like, who is that? Like, does she even go here?
She doesn't even go here.
And if anyone knows me in real life, they know that I would probably rather climb a skyscraper than volunteer to be in front of a camera. So I was like, I don't want to be here. They don't want me to be here. And then someone loves to bring that story up because apparently I was photobombing. I was like, not voluntarily. I don't even remember who pushed me into it, but it was literally like, go.
I seem to recall a photo being taken then too, and somebody was like, Nick, get over here. And I remember awkwardly feeling like, I think they're including me only because they feel they have to, as the only faculty member that was representing that night. And I was like, no, it's okay, guys, let me take the picture.
So not true. Mike was also there.
Oh,
he's also in the picture.
It was? I think he left by that point. But yeah, still, like we were the token representatives of the older people. I was like, okay, thanks, guys.
That is basically my life and my existence because my social gatherings tend to aim around Danielle's friends, which means I am the token older guy while we're there.
Yeah, token grandpa.
We're having a little bit of a visit from Buddy.
Hi.
As my wife open mouth kisses our cat on camera.
Continue.
So anyway, Susie, sorry, I interrupted you. You all had experiences where you basically tangentially saw each other's faces, but never had a face-to-face conversation is what I'm hearing.
Even though you've been in the same room.
Yeah, it was pretty much like, I know who her mentor is. I get along with them. They say she's nice. I don't know what they say about me and I don't want to know. But it's just like, okay, you exist. Wish you the best. don't really know how you take your coffee or if we have anything to talk about.
And we were supposed to room together for PSYOP.
And we were supposed to go to PSYOP together, yes.
But that was it. So September, I'm back. We had been talking about a podcast together about our whole experiences, but we had never met. And we didn't really know that much about each other, except for the things that had been coming up and we had in common. So being COVID and my OCD self, you being you.
Okay. I promise, like, I know where she's going with this and it's not offensive, but it does not come up.
You being you.
Being you.
Yeah.
We went to Lincoln Park. Well, we met up in our middle point, which was Lincoln Park.
Yeah, because we were like, well, we want to hang out, but you just flew in internationally. We both know what our healthcare situation is like, and it's like not greatest. Neither of us really wants to get the big C virus. So we're gonna be outside. We're gonna wear our masks, and we're gonna just go from there. Because at that point, I was also pretty much complete isolation. Like, I see my living boyfriend, and we FaceTime everyone else, and that's it. And we didn't want to risk it, but
Long story short, I'm looking up the actual number, but I think I made her walk like 30K that day.
yeah, you did.
Yeah.
You
So
just
we
went on a very long walk.
It was like 5 hours, and we managed to walk like all of Lincoln Park, south of Lincoln Park. I walked her home all the way up to Edgewater, and then I ended up Ubering home. And I became the person I despise. I had to take my shoes off in the Uber because my feet were done. Like, I literally went home and like express shipped myself a pair of sneakers with phone support, because I was like, if this friendship is gonna continue, we can't keep doing this.
My feet will not be able to withstand this friendship as it is.
And just for record, it's not like I wear like, 12-inch heels or like anything crazy. I had like just comfy loafers on, but we walked half of the lakefront trail in 5 hours.
So you got along, I'm assuming.
Yeah, we were supposed to meet for like an hour or so, and then I think I went home at like 8 at night.
Yeah.
Just like,
Well, I'll see you on Friday. And ever since, she hasn't stopped talking to me. I don't know what to do. Okay, love you.
I can leave right now.
No, we have drinks later.
Without us? So I'm gathering then that maybe a sense of sarcasm and playful banter is maybe what you would consider to be a critical part for long-term friendships for you all?
It's pretty much, if I cannot make fun of you. I went to undergrad in the South. If I'm just being polite to you, I'm not actually just being polite to you.
That's the thing that you gathered from living in the South.
I just recently saw a comedian like who happened to be gay, and he said something like, "Oh, we love that choice for you." And then he asked the guy like, "Do you know anyone from the South, sir?" And he goes, "Yeah." And he goes, "Have you ever had anyone in the South say,
bless your heart?"
Yeah, bless your heart. Bless your heart. And he goes, yeah. And he's like, "We love that choice for you" is the gay equivalent of bless your heart.
That may be something we often say off the record as well. Like,
I've been scanning my mind for like every time I think a gay guy or anyone around gay culture has said, "We love that choice for you," and being like, what bird was I actually in that moment? Like,
what bird was I doing?
I mean, someone was telling me to go for myself. All right.
Oh, I love that choice for you.
It's pretty much like, are we talking cardinal? Are we talking toucan, eagle? Like, where are we going? Yeah, I don't remember when we started using that, but there was definitely a moment I was like, "Oh, love that for you." Moving on.
And she got me a sticker for my water bottle.
Wait. Oh yeah, I did.
That said, "Love that for you."
Aw. That is awesome.
Danielle, do you have any other questions?
No, I'm just real pumped to talk about the Princess Diaries. I'm gonna be honest.
ladies, is there anything about friendship in general, your friendship specifically, that you feel you need to get off your chests that we haven't yet addressed?
Oh, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Dani, because I was about to say thank you, Nick. My heart my heart rate just went up. So I was like, well, okay, she's gonna like.
I'm just gonna turn the spotlight right on you. Just
think about that question, whatever he asked. How is it? So being friends, clearly you guys get along. How is it working together on a podcast? Is it different? Because, for example, I love my best friend more than anything. She just left our house 2 minutes before the
I thought
podcast.
this was about to be a story about me and
no.
It's like, love Nick, but
I love him.
Working on this podcast. Jesus.
No, but when I travel with Lizzie, who's my best friend, we don't get along. I don't know if that's similar to you all in your like podcasting professional world versus your friendship, or how's that going for you?
So we have 2 jobs in common, actually.
Oh yeah, you mentioned that. Tell me more about that.
So, well, when we were both still in grad school, I started a CTA internship, same as Nick as well. And then Susie started one. We were on different teams though. And so we barely overlapped there. But then at the same time, you got hired 2 weeks before I did.
Well, yeah, because I recommended you.
See, you could have avoided
I got you that job. That's what was just said right there.
Trust me, I don't know if it shows on camera, but the subtitle was about here. But yeah, and then we got hired within 2 weeks of each other for whichever reason, at the same consultancy job with the Lindsay group. I'll give you a second to recoup yourself. You should take that time. And I think for the podcast specifically, it helped that we were not super close friends before. So as we were going into it, we couldn't make assumptions of each other. We had to be like, are you okay with this? Like, even from the silly things, like, well, not silly, but like more superficial, like, are we going to drop an F-bomb here and there? Because I swear like a sailor when I get passionate. And I didn't know if she was okay with that. Or Susie's already existing IO psychology knowledge page, work psych. And it's like, are we integrating that? Is that your brain baby? Like, how are we mixing the two things? How are we going to interact? And I think it's been the same when we have disagreements, or just mostly when Susie needs to call me out because I'm late on a deadline. If we're being real, it's just like, hey, love you, but like, you're dropping the ball. Let's keep it moving. Or like, what do we need to do to get this done? So I think that helped that we were not like BFFs forever before we started.
Yeah, we're very open with each other and very clear on like, these are my expectations, these are yours. Where can we actually meet in the middle? And if there's something that one of us really wants to do, we're fairly good with compromise. And yeah, if something isn't going well, I'll just be like, I know things are going on, but like,
let's rein it in.
Yeah. And it goes both sides.
Yeah. I think we've definitely had days where we both text each other like, today's a no day. I'm not feeling it. We're not talking about the podcast today. Let's try again tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, and we give each other fairly good amounts of space too. The other thing that like, we don't live together, so we don't really have to talk to each other if we really don't want to. And there's been days where like we normally text each other morning every day because we're super cute.
Oh,
but
subtext clingy codependently. Yeah, but it's true. Like we have some days where I'm like, you didn't text me morning. Did I do something? Like that's where my anxious mind goes.
And I'm just here like, she needs a break. I'll text her tomorrow, or I'll text her tonight and be like, oh, everything okay? Cool, bye.
It's like, oh, we worked on this thing until 10 p.m. last night. So let's give each other like at least 12 hours of not work.
Yeah. And really,
go ahead. Sorry, Susie.
The only thing is like, we can very much exchange jobs. The only thing is I do the editing. Claudia has been begging me to teach her how to, and then she actually never tells me to teach her when we're together.
To be fair, you never edit when we're together, but
That's
either
very
way,
true.
eventually I'll get to the editing bit. But
I was gonna say like, oh dear, whose fault is it really? Ding, ding, ding. Put the gloves up.
No, it's very much division of labor. Like I pretty much stop where at sending emails when it comes to technological progress. Like I appreciate anyone that can do anything, but like putting Instagram filters on our posts is about where my technical expertise tops off. But I write the outline, so
You write the outlines,
works out.
I edit, we both do emails.
I do think it's interesting. Two things that I thought about just to relate other people's relationships. And this is one of the things I think that points out any significant relationship that you have that's both personal and professional can create these types of barriers that you're talking about. Obviously, my wife, Danielle, here likes to poke fun at the fact that she doesn't pick any of the movies. But also we have had whole conversations about how she is just the talent. I edit everything. She shows up and brings the funny, and that is all she is contractually obligated to do.
Right.
But that comes with maybe not picking the movies unless, because if I'm picking guests or arranging guests, then it's those guests picking those movies. And if you're not having any strong opinions when we're not having guests, then I end up picking a movie. So.
And I appreciate you for all the work that you do.
Aw.
Oh.
The other thing I was going to say, though, is that there are, speaking of that, definitely some days where, like, I'm sure anyone who listens to this might think that we are some perfect couple or whatever, that, but it's the whole filtered thing. And not even like we try to filter our relationship the way that some people do with Instagram, but just in the sense of like, hey, I'm in a shitty mood or kind of pissed at you right now. We probably shouldn't record this podcast about relationships.
That makes sense.
It's like, let's figure it out and then we can talk about it once it's fixed. Yeah.
We've definitely had some. In fact, that's why we try these days to be a little better about recording in advance, because we've had times in the past too where like you get to like the night before where you're trying to stick to a release schedule and I'm trying to adhere to that, but we're both very much not in a like, hi, let's talk about us kind of mood, but you still got to do something. And then it's that anxiety on top of other anxieties. So I'm glad to hear that you all have a little bit of that too, of like, hey, you know what, there's just some days where we're like, we were supposed to today, but that's just a non-stop.
Oh, yeah.
That's just a no-go.
Oh yeah, especially I think so. I'm working through a bunch of pandemic anxiety, other anxiety, and so sometimes like I know we scheduled to record today, but this is going to be my level of energy. I'm gonna be like, hey guys, thank you for coming in. It's great. I'm so excited to tell you about this topic, and it's just not gonna make a good episode. So at that point, my anxiety is not gonna go away. We are gonna waste the episode. My anxiety is gonna tell me that Susie hates me because I'm wasting her time. It's like at that point, let's just wait until we can work through it and move on.
Yeah.
But also, yeah, we're now gonna stop the podcast for 2 months.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we both have like hard lines, like we're not recording on Sundays because that means I have to edit it in the next 5 hours, and that's just not gonna happen.
I was gonna say, isn't today Sunday? Sorry for throwing you off.
We are not doing your editing.
Yeah, exactly.
I have until Tuesday.
That's true.
Which I actually just didn't think about. This is the first one we've had with the semester having started, and Monday is my actual, like, I'm gonna put in 13 hours, so that's gonna suck. But I'll deal with that tomorrow. I was gonna try to move us on to our next one. Okay. That is where I was going next. Would you like to introduce the next idea? What is our next segment, Danielle?
I think I'm
just asking for you to give me the name. That's literally it.
Closer Through Science.
There you go.
Hashtag.
Yes.
And Nick, what is Closer Through Science?
Well, Closer Through Science is where we ask ourselves or our guests a series of questions developed by Aaron et al., who discovered if they put two strangers in front of each other and made them ask these questions, they start to get and feel closer, more emotionally intimate with those individuals. So we all, look at that, physically closer too. We ask these of our guests, and then we have them get that so all of our listeners can feel closer to them. And then from there, we try to encourage our listeners to share their answers to these questions on social media with the hashtag Closer Through Science, so that we can all get closer together.
Cute. So before you pick out the question, I realize that I'm looking over this way a lot, and I'm not ignoring you. My cat is just so dang cute, and I want to just keep looking at him. So if you you see me looking off to the right,
That is the best excuse for a side eye I've ever heard. I'm gonna steal that. Just like
my cat. I promise my cat is over there.
It's totally the cat. It is not me judging you whatsoever.
All right, Nick. So also warning you all, this is like a long list and we've had a lot of guests. So we've gone down through the list. And as the list goes on, the questions get more intimate and tougher.
Well,
okay, so we don't get a warm up. Okay.
Nope, no warm up. Nope. Just gonna have to deal with it. That's just how it is. So I actually felt comfortable with this because the next question I think will work very well for things I've heard you both share on your own podcast that I don't think you'll feel uncomfortable sharing. How do you feel about your relationship with your mother?
Oh, that's an interesting question.
But I'll start. I love Susie's mom. We've had her on the podcast. She's given me wedding advice. We were just on the phone with her before recording this. So this is what? It's not secret. I've said it on the record before. I love Susie's mom. But we've also cited both of our moms very often on the podcast and just things they taught us when we were in elementary, middle school that just seemed like, okay, mom, whatever you say. Start to make more and more sense the closer you get to 30.
That's true.
I lost count of how many times I cited my mom or used my mom as an example for homework things for Nick. But yes, my mom is my role model and we aspire to be like her.
Yep, that's pretty much it. And my mom, so for those on your podcast that may not know, I'm originally from Italy, and Italians have more sayings than minutes in the day. And so my mom just became an incredible database of like for any situation we run into or pretty much any IOPsych concept, there is probably a Sicilian saying that kind of touches on it. And so she would listen to the podcast and she would be like, I don't catch everything. You're speaking very fast in English, but I got that part.
I tracked that saying that you gave me.
Yeah. I'd be like, you translated it wrong. I was like, sorry.
Whoops.
I love that, like, in the context of describing that your mother gave you a lot of sayings, you used some random turn of phrase or saying.
Yeah, that there are more Italian sayings than in the day.
And I used to do that in class as well. And I would say something and then I just would like hear the crickets and Nick or other instructors just politely be like, so anyways.
It's okay. I've learned these idioms are difficult to do. I mean, I use the phrase like 6 in one hand, half a dozen in the other, or baby out with the bathwater. There's been multiple occasions where I use throw the baby out with the bathwater. And then I catch myself because I realize there's like quizzical looks around the room. And I'm like, oh shit, I've just used none of you understand what I just said. And everyone's like too afraid to say that to the professor. It'll look stupid. And so you have to like reel it in and then be like, okay, I gotta stop and explain this thing. And yeah. No,
but Nick also says things like, you're an old man. You say things that like are sayings, but no one says them anymore. That's why people don't know what you're talking about. You're like an 80-year-old person.
It does not help. I feel like my dad had a lot of phrases and sayings that he said that he actually like he got from the generation before him, but he still carried through. And then I have picked up a lot of those. So really, they're like, you're not wrong. They're like 3 generations old that nobody still says them.
So the moral of the story is you both love your mothers.
Yes.
Indeed.
Cute.
And with that, we'll go ahead and take a break, movie lovers, so that we can come back and discuss what movie, Claudia and Susie?
Princess Diaries.
Oh my God.
That was friggin' adorable. We'll see you on the other side.
Can I show you the picture I just took of my cat? I had to prove to you how cute he was being.
Oh my God. It's showing off.
I hate that the like lighting is you get the gist
Yeah.
of what's happening, right? Okay. He's just laying by the door like
He was clearly, so because I insisted on closing the door, we usually try to put a little rubber thing there that lets them come and go. And they do this sometimes, knock the little rubber thing out. So now the door is like closed enough that he can't get it open. So instead he's been sitting there like pawing at it at one end.
It's like, dear people with opposable thumbs, come be of service.
I think he's actually blocking his brother cat from
That
coming in.
could be
He's
also.
like, no, not you.
Does anyone need to use the restroom while we're on a break or anything like that?
Very good.
Stop recording and start again, or
No.
Okay.
It's. I've discovered it's just as easy at this point now to edit this stuff out as it is to, especially since we're doing the video. So
Cool.
Okay.
All right.
and we're back. Oh, what a great! Did you all have a great break? Wasn't that great?
We did
It
a
was great. I saw a
stretch.
really cute cat.
Danny showed us some yoga moves. Very great.
Yeah, we did a whole yoga sequence. It was
Mhm.
great.
It was great.
So now I'm pumped about this part if I haven't said it yet, because we're going to talk about the Princess Diaries. So Nick, do you have to say anything or should I ask the question?
Oh no. So we got to go. We got to go
Oh.
opening credits. Danny's
I
Dingle,
never
and then
remember.
their love story with it. Yes. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
So opening credits. So Princess Diaries, for those of you who don't know, it was released in 2001. It's a Disney movie. For those of you who will hear Danielle talking about how much she's watched this movie, you might sense that there's a bit of a trend if you're listeners of this podcast. Disney movies were very much in the lexicon of these are ones that Danielle's going to watch 1,000 times and no other movies.
That's true.
But so 2001, it stars Anne Hathaway. It was probably, I would think, her breakout role. It's got Julie Andrews. I mean, just an international treasure. Mandy Moore is also in this movie, which I thought was clearly sort of her auditioning for the movie Saved. If anybody knows that movie, see, Susie knows what I'm talking about. And yeah, okay. Sandra Oh, we've got Sandra Oh with a small part. We cracked up. Just a quick note about Sandra Oh. If you've ever listened to TikTok, and there was this trend for a while where it was like,
No.
the queen is coming.
Nope.
No?
Yeah, I mean, you're close. It's Gupta. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. The queen is coming. And then people would pick up their cats and use it as a phone. And,
And then they would throw their headphones around.
It's
But it-
clearly something we're passionate about, Nick. Come on.
It was hilarious though, because I think that, and I wrote this down. I love Sandra Oh. Did not expect her to have any part in this, let alone a small one. Go watch Invincible if you haven't. But B, I think that is the first time that there was like a thing that became like a pop culture reference in the greater zeitgeist that you knew clearly when it came up, and I had no friggin' idea where that had come from when it happened on TikTok. I was like, okay, this is a weird thing to be quoting. Anyway, the thing that I thought was also worth noting is we've got Hector Elizondo, so we've got some nodding. Claudia knows who that is. For those of you who are listening, that's probably that guy in your heads. He's one of those character actors, but he's that guy in this movie, and he's
play?
the security person who is her bald
Joe?
Yes, Joe.
Mhm.
Thank you. He also plays essentially the same role of that guy who is the sort of mentor in Pretty Woman, which, fun fact, this is directed by Gary Marshall, who also directed Pretty Woman and is the guy who created all the like Valentine's Day and New Year's Eve movies and things of that nature. So that's the opening credits.
What's his name? Gary Marshall?
Gary Marshall's the director.
Gary Marshall, I love your work. I know you're listening out there.
Years from now. So that's the opening credits. Any other sort of opening things that anybody wants to share?
Opening things.
No.
The music
Okay.
is great. It's very early 2000s, like girl power. I was bopping the whole time. There's some Hanson in there. I think there's some Mandy Moore songs in there.
I think she was contractually obligated to have sung on screen because there's like this weird cut in. Anyway.
Yeah.
Look, you're
All
already
right.
on the payroll, so you might as well sing us something.
That's right.
Like, let's be real. You had no real acting in this movie. So she becomes a wonderful actress later on, but she was early. Anyway, they brought her on because she was stunt casting. But Dani, why don't you give us a brief spoken word summary of this movie with Dani Nic?
Okay. San Francisco. A nerd. Truly a beautiful person if you just brush her hair. A princess? No, too shy. Two boys, one bad, one good. Feel good, Julie Andrews, happily ever after.
All right. Very
And
good.
Fat Louie.
That's the catcher. That's the catcher right there.
It's like if you haven't figured it out until now, Fat Louie. That's gonna be like, oh my gosh, that's it.
That's how the second one opens.
It's how the first one ends, was a button on that cat where he's like, oh, Fat Louis is taking to royal life, and he's like sitting on some feathery pillow with a crown. I loved it.
Well, technically, it also starts with Fat Louis, because it starts with the panning into Mia's window, and it's like, keep out. This is Mia and Fat Louis only. I was like, I had not watched it in a while. I was like, who is Fat Louis? And I was like, oh my gosh, the cat. There we go.
Claudia, how dare you forget the cat? That's the most important part.
I mean, he is in almost every scene.
They do some like just keep cutting to like Fat Louis reactions, you know.
Yeah, that's good.
But so that is the summary of the movie. If you movie lovers have not seen it before, now you have everything you need to know for our discussion of it. But to start that discussion, Claudia, Susie, tell us your love story with this movie. What's the first time you remember seeing it? How does it, what's the meaning for it that it has for each of you, or for your relationship and friendship together? And or why did you pick this out of all the other movies you could have?
There was a list.
It was a process, but
the first time I saw Princess Diaries, I was like 7. Yeah, 7. I was a baby.
I don't know why you're looking at me as if I
was a baby.
Claudia was there
because you were older. Sorry, I was a baby.
Looks could kill right now.
Yes, I'm the geriatric half of this partnership, but please continue.
Ow. I was a baby. Love Anne Hathaway. The like single mother cat, and the grandmother that has never been in your life and then appears one day and wants to be your best friend, really resonated with me.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't know what else.
Claudia, what's your first memory of seeing it?
So not quite that detailed, but I just remember like when I was older than Susie was when it came out, as was made abundantly clear. My parents and I moved from like something that in America would be like the smallest deal. Like we moved 20 minutes away to another town. But it was a big deal. It's not super common in Italy. And so like I remember we had like barely anything in the house, but they set up the couch and the TV at least. And it was one of the first movies we watched of like, okay, new house, pizza, couch, and we're watching this. And for me, I grew up with Mary Poppins. So seeing Mary Poppins like made it big, married into a royal family somewhere in a small kingdom. She said she married into the crown, so technically it could all be in universe.
That's true.
And also I was definitely the kid with the braces, the frizzy hair. Me and hairbrushes had a very complicated relationship for a while. So the idea of like, oh my gosh, they just straighten their hair and all of a sudden she's cool. Like objectively a lot more shallow than what Susie just shared. But I was like, there's hope yet. As someone who had worn glasses since I was 5, I was like, oh, contacts and hair straightening. Okay, I'm seeing how it is.
It takes though. Pluck your eyebrows, straighten your hair, take your glasses off.
Cucumbers.
And good. Learn to wear tights instead of socks and combat boots.
Apparently.
No, that and yeah, I remember the artist mom loved was also like, oh my gosh, they have the coolest house in the universe.
Yes. I wrote that. That's one of the first things I wrote down is like, I would have loved to live in this like house, this firehouse transitioned into, and have that the tower that she goes up to. Yeah.
And one of my aunts was like not living in a place quite as cool, but the artist traveled the world, like bring me back things from like all of her trips. Cool aunt. So it was like, okay, I can see like I like this like strong independent woman that does her thing portrayal. I don't think it was quite that well formed in my head at 9, but I was like, okay, I like what I'm seeing. And yeah, that was it.
Definitely like the cool kids in school and you being like the outcast resonated. Favorite scene when I was little, the pop of like when you kiss a boy and you're like the pop.
That is adorable. Question: did both of you watch it in English or was it in Spanish and Italian?
I watched it in English for the first time to prep for this. So I was also gonna say like there was some of the Italian in the movie. I'm like, someone did their research, but then they got too close to the deadline and they just kind of skimmed on the conclusion. Because at one point there is a reporter that like mixes Italian and Spanish.
Wow.
I was like, okay, someone didn't do their homework there.
Mm.
But that's also why I think Fat Louis had another name in Italian, and I didn't think to look it up before recording. But
that makes sense.
Yeah.
I wasn't allowed to watch movies in Spanish. I would only watch movies in English. So yeah.
Is that like by design to help you learn English more faster?
Yeah, so I learned English first and then Spanish. But then all of the movies were made in English, and my mom was like, why would you watch them in Spanish? That makes no sense.
I mean, if you understand the language, you might as well watch it in the language it was intended.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. I'm sure I watched this like as soon as it came out on Disney Channel in 2001.
It came out in theaters, right? Like it was in
I
theaters?
think it did, yeah.
Okay, anyway.
I don't remember seeing it in theaters.
It wasn't one of the like Disney Channel originals that only
No.
yeah, it was definitely not straight to VHS, straight to DVD kind of production.
Yes, it came out in theaters, but I probably saw it when it was on Disney Channel. And then I watched it every single time ever it was on Disney Channel. It's just such a fantastic movie. I also own this one on DVD because it's just like such a feel good woman power. Like you're saying, the single woman, 2 single women, because grandma's single, technically. And I also was a very large, very nerdy kid who just never felt cool. And so like thinking that you could be an outcast, but also be a princess is like very inspiring to little girls, I think.
Yeah.
And Nick, what was your love story with this?
She says that as she knows some of it. We were on a train home last night and we started watching it on my phone, and that's the first time I've ever seen it. We watched the first half that way and then the rest on a television when we got here.
This is like one of the only movies that ever existed in the whole world that Nick hasn't seen that I have.
And that it arguably is actually a movie that's also like hugely popular, as opposed to like there are some movies that you've seen, but it's like, a deep cut on the Disney Channel, and that's the only way that you would have ever watched it. And if it wasn't therefore at my age range when I was watching Disney Channel, I wouldn't have seen it. This, I know, like people know it, people talk about it. Like I said, people obviously reference it. That's a whole TikTok thing. And yet had never seen it. And there was part of me that was like, maybe I did, and I just don't remember it. When we were watching it, I was like, nope, I have never seen this film. Nothing but the like scenes that I'm sure I've seen clips of when they were, prettying her up basically in those jokes. I'd seen those clips before, but that's it. That's the only thing I'd ever seen.
I can't wait to hear your review, but I forgot. I knew the foot popping was something in my childhood, and I couldn't remember which like rom-com it was in. And I just posted a picture for our anniversary last week, and it's the picture of us kissing, but from our wedding, but my foot is popped.
Oh,
and that's why it's one of my favorite pictures.
You didn't tell me that part. I turned to you while we were watching this and was like, have I ever kissed you so good that it made your foot pop? And you were like, yeah, but you didn't tell me that like specific cute
on our wedding
anniversary. Okay.
Well, late happy anniversary.
Oh, thank you.
Now, I just realized another thing about the beautification process. So that is also a trend with growing up watching movies in Italian and then watching them in their recorded language or in English. No clue that the hairdresser was Italian until like last week. And it's the same thing, like if you watch Eurotrip, like exactly who I'm talking about, the creepy guy with the suit. That is a Spaniard to me. That is a Spanish man to me. And instead of I got to English speaking context places and people were like, oh my gosh, like have you ever watched Eurotrip? And I was like, yeah, so what? And just throwing it out there. Like did not know that was an Italian character until last week, and I was so offended. It was so like, oh my god, like it's a stereotype. The part that offends me is that it's kind of accurate.
Oh, that's funny.
Like, oh darn it. Okay. Fine.
So that's all of our stories first seeing it though. But you all, I know like you mentioned, there was a little bit of juggling and deciding and having to whittle it down to finally come to the conclusion that this movie would be the one that we would watch for this episode. So how and why did it win out?
Okay, so we started with what, like, I think we started like looking at like 12, and then we're like, okay, we're gonna watch these 4, and we're gonna see what we also have like more to say about. If we name in the finalists, we had Charlie's Angels, the 2001, Shrek, and Bring It On.
Oh, these are all fantastic choices, ladies.
So just so you know, you all the episodes that can still happen, and we will.
Hey, I am more than happy to have you all come talk about your romantic relationships as well. I know that those are probably very interesting, being international and finding love, etc., and so forth. So pick those in the future. Totally fine. I am happy though you picked this one, because of all the ones you just listed, this was the only movie I had not seen before. So thank you, and continue.
I think I really liked watching Shrek. Also, first time watching Shrek in English. I was like, I don't know, I'm not really like, yeah, of course, it's Shrek. It's part of popular culture. But I was like, I don't know that we have that much to talk about. I don't know. And then you really wanted Charlie's Angels, and I was also like, I watched it. It's funny. I don't really get it. So like, okay, I watched it. It's a solid like 6.5 out of 10. Like, I'm sorry.
Rude. So rude. So rude.
Okay, that's how you felt about Shrek, though.
Yeah.
Sure. And then
so
Bring It On.
The highest agreed upon. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Bring It On.
Bring It On was just technical difficulties. I could not figure out how to stream that movie to save my life. And that was also something that I didn't really pick up in Italy, because we do not have cheerleading whatsoever, or color guard, or
interesting.
And so I missed the window for like being in the age range when it was like the coolest thing on earth.
Yeah.
And I missed all the cultural references, and then I'm just not meant to see that movie. I still have not managed to get my hands on it.
It is a good one, I will say, but I also grew up a cheerleader, so there's some good, like, never mind. If you ever, it's good.
You try it all the time.
Sure.
It's cold in here. See some churros in the atmosphere. Okay, I'm gonna stop now.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you all a minute.
So you chose The Princess Diaries.
Yes. I think, well, you already knew it by heart, pretty much. And then I watched it one night, and the next morning I called her up and I was like, okay, there's all these great themes. There's female empowerment. There's positive communication after disagreements. There's a healthy portrayal of divorced parents and widowed parents, which early 2000s, we still did not have the healthiest way of representing those sometimes.
Accurate.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, it was just like, and I think he also like didn't shy away from like, say, the paparazzi scenes. Like, I mean, they tried to show a naked, like, stripping minor.
Yeah,
and I was like, that was pretty strong, Disney. Like, we went there. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we were watching it, and I turned to Danielle while that scene happened, and I was like, no, this is not like, haha, silly jokes. We're pranking our person we don't like. This is like, imagine being a 15-year-old girl.
Yeah.
And suddenly you're surrounded naked. I was like, that would be straight traumatizing. Like, that is some therapy happening later in her life, regardless.
For sure.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, that is how you get a detail of security, and you're never gonna be alone unless you're in the bathroom.
Didn't I say that to you? I was like, why? She should have just had Joe with her. She needs her bodyguard. But yeah, I appreciate that you watched this movie or chose this movie, because it is great, but also rewatching it for me, so many side characters have hysterical one-liners that I was dying. Like when they slide back down. Yes, as they slide back down the hill into the trolley, and there's the nuns, and they're like, we should call 911. And then she's like, she put me on hold. And the other nun goes, for God's sake. It's just, that's funny. And then the neighbor's name is Mr. Robitussin. That is a cough medicine.
Mm-hmm.
I don't.
Okay, I thought so, but I wasn't completely sure. Yeah, I was like,
yeah, and he's like so self-deprecating, and he's like, I can't believe I won an Emmy.
But yet he's also still trying to like write his next piece. Clearly, the entire movie. Yeah, the choices there were awesome. I will say. Go ahead, Claudia.
Sorry, I was gonna say that has to be the most actually subtle product placement I can think of. sometimes people are like, oh, let me just grab a drink while you tell me your story. And like product placement is not usually subtle at all. It's like, oh, Mr. Robotassin, how are you doing? Good. It's like,
I didn't even think
that is actually well done.
that. Good job, Disney.
That's
Geniuses.
impressive. We've kind of been dancing around it, I guess, but nobody's put too fine a point on it. The thing that it struck me while we were watching this, because we've obviously gone back and watched a lot of people's movies that have a lot of nostalgia, and especially one like this, it's an opportunity for me to have zero nostalgia or zero attachment to it whatsoever. And I was impressed. I would say there's only one thing that I kind of in my mind wrote down as this is dated. It could and should have been done differently, in my opinion, if we're made today. But largely, the comedy, I think, held up. As you all pointed out, like the themes and some of the idea of having relationships like that, especially in the early 2000s, was like really actually ahead of its time at the time, and would still fit in, I think, today to have those types of emotionally stable relationships portrayed, you know, between divorced or etc.
What was the one thing that was dated?
Okay, I know. I kind of figured if I brought this up, it would probably, but I was going to try and save it for later. Because I wrote it down at the end. The whole romantic subplot between her and the brother was entirely unnecessary. Like, it wasn't bad. It wasn't done well. Not like done poorly. It just wasn't needed. Like, I watched and I remember them like kind of cutting to him at the very beginning, and he just looks very generic to start, and he kind of isn't very impressive. Like, no offense to the actor, but he doesn't really pop on screen. And you know, there's kind of some of that, the whole car thing, but that could have existed with him just being a completely platonic friend. And to me, it felt like, well, we can't have a princess movie without our princess having, you know, her prince, some guy that she falls in love with at the end. Like, you could have still had the douchebag guy and had the whole subplot of him, but you don't need the other side of her ending up happy at the end. She could have just been happy being a princess with her family, with her other friend, etc. I think that would have been fine, but that was my thing. Is like, we have this moment and the leg pop and all that jazz.
Listen, yes, you wouldn't get the leg pop without Michael, I think is his name. The other thing is, he leads to a very important line, because he said, why did you choose me? And she said, because you're the only one who saw me when everyone else thought I was invisible. And that is the importance of that dude. And I'm getting goosebumps now, because as a little girl, a girl who was like lame and chubby and felt invisible, to see that there are people out there who can still see you is important. That he saw through just the beauty. And I think Disney was saying, hey, even if you straighten your hair and take off your glasses, or, you know, in today's day and age, these girls fill in their lips and shit. You don't have to do that. People will still see you for who you are. So that was my takeaway from that.
So let me caveat.
We're fighting. Sorry. I understand that you guys are our guests, but we're going to talk.
There's 3 women here.
I am
male perspective,
thoroughly entertaining this.
And I will just say, like, I will take the caveat of like, okay, this is my opinion, but I admit I don't have any of that feeling to it, that baggage. But for me, there's a way you could communicate that exact same message about being seen without it having to be a romantic partner. My own personal opinion. Instead, what we've done is still subtly said, hey, women, you don't matter unless you are seen by some man.
That's fair. But as a teenager, that's all you think about.
That's also true. What are your thoughts and feelings, ladies?
You do need the boyfriend at the end. If not, it's not a Disney movie, I think. But
Frozen, Moana.
Those are new.
That's what I was
thinking. 20. Yeah, 20.
Yeah, that's the new world.
Yeah, they also made them look completely different.
Yeah.
All the new Disney princesses look completely different.
Sure.
But yeah, it wouldn't be a Disney movie if there's not a single parent or an orphan and a relationship at the end.
Fair.
Fits the formula.
Got it. Now I'm conflicted, because on one side, I see Nick's point. I also see Dani's point, because it's like, well, yeah, I want to be seen I had like a braces that made me look like I just came out of boxing class, because it looked like a mouth guard. It was terrible. My nickname in 9th grade was $1 Million Baby from the Hilary Swank movie. Like, I absolutely understand the whole, like, hey, you're not looking at me just because I'm the cool kid with the cool backpack and the nice haircut.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, the raging feminist in me wants to still say that is catering to the male gaze and therefore it's negative. But also we are hormone-riddled teenagers that think that having a boyfriend is the end all, because how are you going to have a white picket fence, 2 kids house
Without
if you don't start with the male gaze?
Obviously, right? Yeah. So it started to advertise. I thought to myself, maybe this will matter because it sets up something for the sequel, because I know that there were sequels, and if they have some therefore meaningful relationship and they have some very growth and, etc. Nope. Because then the first advertisement for the second movie comes up and it's her and Chris Pine, and clearly there's some other, romantic.
Oh, do you know what the plot is of the second one though? And this is why I didn't watch it, because she has 30 days to find a husband. It's like, oh my God, we've seen that so many times before.
Empowerment, and no, go get yourself a ring.
And don't forget, you need to have a man in order for it to matter.
Yeah. So we'll say Princess Diaries 2, and I think there's a 3. Forget about that. Only one exists.
Only one exists. All right. Well, I'm glad I'm not alone. And I said, like I started with, it's not that big of a thing. I thought it was the only thing. And I agree. It's just that, like, to Susie's point, back then, it was literally the Disney formula. You could not end a Disney movie. My umbrance that I take with it is, in the modern lens, we have now moved past it, and we have I think Frozen, I mean, obviously, like, was the groundbreaking movie. Everybody talked about it because it, like, sets up the movie being like, oh, it's going to be about this romantic subplot, and then it was like, nope, just kidding, that dude's the villain and sisters matter more.
And even awesome. It is awesome. Even then, so many tweets about it was like, well, then she's gay, obviously.
Right? Because people, that's how we've been enculturated. It's like, we can't fathom the idea that we would have protagonists that didn't need to have a romantic relationship at the center of the story. Like,
but then Anna is engaged also in the second one, right?
True. There's been people who've made that complaint about.
So it's kind of like catering to both.
Yeah, she still has a man, but it's not that important.
Sequel sucks. That's basically what we just said. This one was, pushing the boundaries in a lot of ways, and then the sequel was like, oh, just kidding, you got to get married in 30 days.
Run.
And on the tangent of, like, still having to absolutely find a way to, like, romanticize and make it a relationship thing. Luca, when it came out this summer.
Oh, I haven't seen it yet.
Well, I'm not gonna spoil all of the plots because it is definitely worth watching. And, like, I think, speaking of Italian culture in, like, the 50s and 60s, they did the research. I appreciate it. But people were so upset because no one ends up dating anyone by the end of the story. And they were like, well, there's a female and 2 male protagonists. And we're like, well, no one ends up with a girl, so clearly they're gay and this is problematic.
Obviously.
And I was like, it's 2021, first of all. Second, it could just be that they are children. Maybe we stop sexualizing them. Like, maybe the solution was in front of us all along. That no one needs to be dating anyone at 10 years old.
Yeah. Jeez. Man.
Yeah, like, it's but that we've been so conditioned that if it is a Disney movie, someone ends up marrying the prince. I mean, Ariel got married at 16 years and 3 days, so why not? It's
and those stories are based on things where those children were even younger. I think she was like 13 or younger in the
actual story,
the original.
Wow.
Anyways, all of this to say, lots of weird things. Maybe avoid the whole, like, you need a man to save you spiel, but
why did you choose it for our friendship?
Okay, I chose it for a friendship. So, like, in the entire span of the movie, it's 2 weeks, 3 weeks since like grandma shows up to
you're a princess and we're moving to Genovia.
Yeah. And it's also like at the beginning, Mia is not allowed to tell anyone, not even her best friend Lily. And it is like, okay, well, you were about to come down with me and picket to save these endangered species and protest capitalism and burn the world. And now you're becoming is it okay to say a normie? Like, you straighten your hair, like, you got the fancy backpack, like, you're blending in to be accepted by the mean cool kids. And Mia's like, I cannot tell you, but you're being rushed. And, like, how do I deal with this? And they think they have, like, 2 major arguments over the course of this 2 weeks or this lapse of time, where it's like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to tell you. I don't recognize my best friend. What are you doing? and again, hormone-riddled teenagers that are trying to understand the system so that they can burn it down, manage to be level-headed enough to be like, hey, you did A, B, and C. A, B, and C made me feel this way. This is how I perceive you now. Where do we go from here? And that is probably the most far-reaching part when it comes to the movie, when it comes to my experience, because like teenagers don't have that level of like
reasoning.
One of those scenes up on the roof top or whatever, where they're like shooting a basketball and she does exactly what you just described. She's like, this is what you did and it made me feel this way.
And I'm like, how many years did you go to therapy, girly? Because that is mature.
Yeah.
Like, I'm still working on communicating that well. What are you doing?
Exactly. Also, that entire scene gave me anxiety of like, what happens? I'm terrible at basketball. If the basketball goes over, like...
Yes.
So,
sorry, that again, I missed some of it.
Oh, did you just smack your hand? How'd that feel?
We're good.
He's pretending like it didn't hurt.
Well, to be fair, so was Lily when she was trying to keep it all in, but
and so do you identify with that, or is that what you feel like that's your friendship, Claudia?
I feel like we are good at like calling out the elephant in the room and it'd be like, look, I'm not saying with teenagers, like it can be easy to be like, oh, you're a horrible person, you're the worst, you're terrible, like making it you are a bad person because I feel bad about this situation. And I think with them in the movie being teenagers, but also the way we're like, okay, this situation is bad. We don't know what's going on. What do we do about it? And just like fixing it up in 5 minutes. I think that's been a very pleasant side of when we do disagree or when we need to fix something.
That's awesome.
And we are not scripted. Clearly, if you ever listen to our episodes.
That's funny.
That is great.
We're never going to be scripted. I could never do this.
I do improv for a living, basically.
And
I don't get any money for it, but I do it for a living.
Anyway.
So Susie, what is your favorite part of this movie and your takeaway, or like the thing that resonated the most?
For our friendship, but definitely that scene. Yeah. I think the last scene at the ball when she's like she's gonna dance and then the boyfriend comes, but when she sees her mom and her mom's boyfriend, and it's like, you're good, this is okay, because like right before that she's having a total meltdown of what am I doing with my life.
Yeah.
And then seeing her mom is like, okay, life is okay. I'm taking the steps and I'm supported by all of these people. Yeah, that is my favorite.
Yeah, I did think at the end it's just very like you both were saying, it's very the movie's just supportive. Like they could have made it be so much more dramatic or like people against each other so much more, but I don't think real life is really like that. And then just to prove that like, hey, it's okay to have a rocky start and then people will still support you no matter what, as long as you're a good person. And I love that the reason that Mia wanted to become a princess was not so that she can look great or get jewels. It was so that she could affect change.
Yeah.
And I think that's just so, I'm like tearing up thinking about it, because like, and it's for Lily, right? Lily's like, I don't have a voice. I only have 12 people who listen to me. Made me think of our podcast. I was like, hello, anybody out there? But anyways,
that's about our subscriber base.
But like her
under exaggerating only a little bit.
Her being able to be like, oh, I can tell people that like in today's world, climate change is bad, get vaccinated, like that kind of stuff. That's great to have that much power as a young girl. So I love that. Such an inspirational movie.
Yeah, I like the message too there of like thinking about others can take you out of your own head too, because she talked about how she's always so focused on herself and doing that. Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah.
Any other pieces that we need to discuss? Any amazing bits about this movie?
Fat Louis.
Fat Louis.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Obviously. Fat Louis.
I had a thought about Fat Louis. There are times they show Fat Louis and then they show a camera angle from where they just showed Fat Louis. And I was like, I think a lot of this is actually from the perspective of the cat. I mean,
I did not have that thought, but I could buy that.
Yeah.
I mean, we did kind of, like you said, Claudia, you kind of enter through, and then the first thing you see is Fat Louie, and then we start to see her. So maybe Fat Louie is actually the perspective that we're getting.
Yeah, this is Fat Louie's story.
Maybe he was just plotting in the background because he wanted the end game of being on a jet on that pillow and
with his own cat crown.
Being the royal cat of Genovia.
Yep. I would say another scene that I think deserves a mention is when Mia takes out her grandma to be like, okay, you've been showing me etiquette and how to move and how to do everything. Let me give you a corn dog. But when her grandma explains, like, yeah, well, like your dad had to make this choice as well. And the way they wrote the dialogue for saying, well, he met this really cool, really smart artist that she could be like, she distracted him, he lost his focus for me. Like they could have phrased it in so many ways that were not necessarily antagonizing, but still not positive. And so because they hint several times that the relationship between mom and grandma is not great, but you don't see that tension once on camera. It's just like, well, we're both here for this child, and that's that on that. Which in early 2000 movies, I think it was starting to be more common to have like the divorced parents trope, but you would have, dad with a BlackBerry and an assistant, and mom with a BlackBerry and an assistant, and be like, sorry, honey, your dad's assistant is too busy to come pick you up, so you're gonna be the sad kid outside of school.
Yeah.
And this movie moved completely away from that. And that I think was the part that was like, oh my gosh, okay, they're really putting thought into this.
I agree.
That reminds me, another one of my notes was that I feel like movies like this tend to lean on the trope of like the grandmother would have been very, very harsh and very judgmental and sort of like straight up probably mean, when she first meets her. And while there's definitely this like, well, we need to train you how to be a princess, I was expecting like, because you're, an uncultured swine, essentially was going to be the impetus or whatever. And that I never felt like that. And I mean, that's why it makes sense, I guess, that they got Julie Andrews.
That's what I was going to say.
Julie Andrews.
Perfection.
Like she probably could have acted like that and it still would have come across as like, I'm sweet and loving because I am Julie Andrews. But no, I thought that was great. And I thought that was something that was well done, was like, there's still this need to change of sorts, like to fit in the role, but it was never like, it was like, if you want to, and I want you to know that you have this option, but it's not like, this is what you have to do. And there's something wrong with you as a person for not being this way already.
It's like, I'm training you to empower you, not to completely turn you inside out.
Exactly. And also just a shout out to Joe, the driver. He's such a good character. And he's the one who actually tells the queen, like, hey, remember when she's 15 years old? Like, calm down. And he clearly has so much love for the queen that it's just like, that's the actual love story of this movie, I think. Yes. Because you don't really know, but you're assuming that he's served her probably for a very, very long time. And they're just like so in love, but not like want to jump your bones or like even romantic love. It's just like respectful adoration, I guess.
Yeah.
And I just love that. And he's just he's a cool dude.
Agreed.
He's a good character. He could be a jerk or he could be a weirdo. It could be a creep, but he's just a very nice, supportive man. So yeah, I get why this movie is great, because it just makes you feel good that there are good people out there that want to support you.
Yep. I would say I would have a lot of questions for the parents of the other high schoolers, because I'm thinking of the non-good people in the movie. I'm like, so your kid thought it was okay to do that? Like,
yeah, to expose a young girl to naked paparazzi, like
naked paparazzi. All the paparazzi were naked.
Yep, that's exactly how I remember that.
Yikes. I think they do have a couple of throwaway lines where like, my dad paid for my school. I think it's like a very, very fancy rich person school. And so we know, with money comes privilege. And so I get where some of these dum-dums are coming from. That pretty little boy, what's his name?
Are you talking about the one Eric Von Deeten, the one who played the pretty hot dude?
He's in a lot of Disney movies as the heartthrob.
I wrote him down as being from Brink. And
Brink! Yes, that's what he's from. That's a good one. Have you all seen Brink?
Yeah. No, but I saw him and I was like, where have I? That's another like, where have I seen this like generic hot surfer dude? because like it just fits the mold of every Disney heartthrob of that moment.
Yeah, he's very dumb too. And then her teacher that starts dating her mom, did you all ever see I'll Be Home for Christmas with Jonathan Taylor Thomas?
I'm also terrible with remembering movies and titles, so maybe I've seen it.
Maybe. So he he's at a fancy boarding school, and then he's like supposed to be home for Christmas, only wants to go home for Christmas because he was promised the car. Anyways, it's his journey of going home for Christmas, and the guy who plays the teacher is a cop that pulls him over. Do you remember this now? Who wants his wife back, and so he goes to sing to his wife, and she works at this cow themed restaurant, and she's like wearing a cow outfit, and I kept saying, why do I know this guy? But it's because he sings, what is her name? Mary or something like that. Anyways, they have all the same actors in all the Disney movies. They just like are reoccurring characters.
Yeah.
Any other scenes that stuck out or final thoughts on why this movie is one of the best movies ever created?
All over like 13 out of 10 movie. That's it. Like you can read into it as much as you want, like you will never find a negative aspect to it besides a little male gaze boyfriend Sish.
And even that, like,
he's a respectful
compared
dude.
to other movies from that time, like it was an unnecessary thing because we discussed, we feel like we need to have some kind of a romance plot, but it's not like, I don't know, it still didn't define her. And I think that's part of the reason I said like you really could cut it, because it was like we felt we needed to have it because it's this thing that we have as a trope, but it's not actually changing any of most of the key stories that you couldn't somehow have altered to tell the same story, in my opinion, without that, because he wasn't a central character.
I'd be curious to see if there were any cut scenes where that was explored more and then they decided to cut it out, because there are some things that was like we're not given enough context on this, like the M&Ms on the pizza. I'm like, yeah, it's cutesy, it's 90s, it's disgusting, it's teenagery. But they mentioned it once and then it's this big apology gesture.
Did you miss though that when you're first introduced to him, he's playing the piano, and on the piano keys are a bunch of M&Ms?
I did miss that.
So I mean, he loves M&Ms, and then they do have a line that's like something about M&Ms. Don't say anything bad about this movie.
So I think now is a wonderful time for us to maybe give our ratings and our would you renew your vows. So generally speaking, listeners and Claudia and Susie, we try to have our 0 through 5 heart ratings be somewhat objective in terms of how good we think this movie is. And then the would you renew your vows is basically like, do you still love it as much as you did when you first saw it, and or would you watch it again? So why don't we I'll go ahead and start, I guess. So since we'll cut the tension.
Like how Dani's like, okay, what are you about to say?
What number?
I debated on this and realized I was gonna give it a 3 out of 5, and I thought I should bump it up to a 3.5.
Generous.
Because I do think that it should be. Susie's like, so much more.
Right, this is giving me like research methods, throwbacks, and flashbacks, just so you know.
Like, why is it not good enough? It was so perfect. How is it?
Like, look, you annoyed me for like 30 minutes after class, so I guess you can get a B+. Fine.
No, I don't think. Anyway, what I decided was, the reason I decided it is because like kind of the whole Rotten Tomatoes, you know what I mean? Is this movie fresh? And I was like, it is definitely fresh, so it needs to be at or above a 70%. But for me personally, I don't know. Maybe watch it again and then it would go up further. What I would also say though is I definitely will renew my vows, because while this was the first time seeing it, I liked it enough that like I would totally watch this again, and it's a good feel good movie, and I can see why you all have watched it, many, many times in some cases. So.
I also think like the movies that you like, that you have more like, what is the word I'm looking for? Connection to, you rate higher. Like you were never a teenage girl.
You got me there. I'll admit to this.
That I know of. So this is not okay. You can have your 3.5. That's fine. I'll give you a 5 out of 5, and I will renew my vows. Next. Go ahead, Susie.
I'm giving it a 5 out of 5, and I'm renewing my vows.
Claudia.
Yeah, 5 out of 5. Like there's just no debate. I can go on about it forever, but it doesn't age poorly at all. It's just worth watching.
Yeah, I agree.
I was going to say, so if we're going to talk about research methods and inter-rater reliability, there is one person who is clearly wrong here, listeners. So just take that also into account. All right.
Or we all share the same bias.
Which is being a teenage girl.
Yep.
So.
And with that, please, Claudia, Susie, what would you like to plug?
My turn? Okay. Well, as we also so happen to be recording our voices on the regular on things that we hope are interesting, if you want to give us a listen, we are Bias Check-In Podcast. You can find us pretty much anywhere you would like to find a podcast.
I have neighbors. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah, your neighbors are loud.
Sorry.
So as I was saying, you can find us anywhere you would like to stream at podcasts. You can find us on most all social media except TikTok, because we're still millennials, at Bias Check-In Podcast. And yeah, and you can leave us a voicemail at anchor.fm under, guess what? Bias Check-In Podcast. So yeah, that's our little plug.
Good job.
That's awesome.
And I would rate their podcast much higher than a 3.5 out of 5, just for what that's worth.
A 3.75 is what he's saying.
Definitely an A+ podcast. All right. There's nothing else for you all to plug? Then
That's it for now.
Dani, what do you have to plug?
Y'all come see me Wednesday night, 7 p.m. at the Den Theater, Comedy Sports. We're back, baby. That's all I got.
All right. So you can then also follow my hilarious wife at.
Oh yeah, and I have Instagram, Dani Miami 4.
You can follow at Comedy Sports for more of that information.
Comedy Sports Chicago.
Live shows finally coming back. You can also, they do online shows for listeners because not all of them are in the Chicagoland area. You can witness those things on the interwebs.
That's it.
And then let's see. For me, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, at Nick Loves Movies. That's NIC Nick LUV Love. Nick Loves Movies. And you can follow us on all the things at In Love with Movies. Pretty much if you search for that, you should be able to find us. We're getting big enough that, if you like type our name in correctly, you'll see that. This is available on YouTube. So if you wouldn't mind, do us a favor. If you like this, if you thought it was fun, you enjoyed some of the conversation, do me. I'm not even asking for you to rate us. Just like share it to one other person. Just if you listened to this point in this podcast, share the link on YouTube, share the link on whatever thing you listen to one other person, be it like a text message that you share personally, or you put it out on your social media, your Twitter, your Instagram. Just spread it to one other person. With the YouTube, I am still trying to get us up to 100 subscribers so that I can actually give us our own /URL. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. So go ahead and, click the subscribe button over there, especially if you're someone who doesn't necessarily watch a lot of YouTube, and therefore it wouldn't impact your day to just subscribe to one channel that you're never going to actually watch. And if you do listen to us on there, do us a favor and, come give us a like and a rating on the other platforms. All right. That's In Love with Movies. We really appreciate it. I love you, Dani.
I love you, Nick.
We love you, Claudia and Susie. Thank you so much for being with us. And we love you, movie lovers and listeners.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all very much. This has been a lot of fun.
Yes. I'm going to listen to your podcast because I haven't. I shouldn't admit that.
Rude.
Sorry. Well, I